Greetings everyone! Mobro Studios here presenting to you my philosophy on YouTube poop. Now, this isn't a tutorial on how to make YTP. There is no step-by-step formula for you to follow to become a great pooper overnight. Rather, this is a list of tips and advice for up-and-coming poopers. These are things I've learned over the years that I think would be helpful to anyone looking to become a pooper. Let's begin, shall we? Before we get into the tips, here's my personal definition of YouTube poop, which lies at the heart of my philosophy. YouTube poop is a style of video editing that involves taking pre-existing sources and remixing them into something bizarre, surreal, and/or random. Keep that in mind as we move along. Tip number 1. Get to know your editor. A lot of people who are new to YouTube poop kinda jump right into it without really knowing what they're doing. One of the first steps to becoming a pooper is learning how to use a video editor. Now, you don't have to learn how to do really complicated, fancy techniques right off the bat. Start with the basic stuff, like splitting, pan cropping, reversing, etc. There are plenty of tutorials on YouTube and around the web for this kind of thing, as well as more advanced techniques, so take the time to look them over and learn from them. Even if you only have Windows Movie Maker at your disposal, because let's face it, the best editors aren't the cheapest, research it, understand it, and try your best with it. Tip number 2. YouTube poop has no concrete rules. Over the years, there have been guidelines that have been passed down from older generations of poopers. Things like avoid overused memes, or watch the length of your poops. Now, these aren't concrete rules, as in, these are the rules and you're not allowed to break them ever! No, that's not it. Like with writing or drawing, you have to learn the rules before you can break them effectively. For instance, making longer poops. Typically, I would tell beginners to start off making shorter poops, because beginners tend to not understand that the longer a poop is, the harder it's going to be to hold the viewer's attention. It's all about having good content to keep the audience engaged. Which, by the way, is something I've always said. Another common one is to look out for older sources and memes. I'm not saying that you can't ever use them, but I would say to try to use them in a way that hasn't been done before. It's not about what you use, it's about how you use it. Tip number 3. Explore different kinds of poops. Okay, major point here. A lot of people tell me that there's only one kind of YTP and that all YTPs are supposed to be funny. This mindset forms what I call the traditional box. People think that all YouTube poops are supposed to follow this exact same formula and aren't allowed to step outside the box. However, over the years, we've had poopers who did step outside the box. And as a result, we have more styles and genres of YouTube poop than ever before. We have poops that contain horror, action, drama, stories, and a ton of different ways to manipulate the source material. Personally, I believe that if these genres and styles never emerged, YouTube poop itself would have become nothing more than an old hat. Think about it. If every YTP looked exactly like how they did back in 2007 and never changed over the past 7 years, would you still be watching them, or would you be bored of seeing nothing but the same old stuff? Anyway, the point here is to check out different YTPs and see what kinds you like or would like to make. Tip number 4. Popularity does not equal quality. All too often, people assume that all the best YouTube poops out there are also the most popular. True, there are poops that are very popular and well made, but this isn't always the case. For example, let's take a look at two poops with vastly different view counts. First, we have a poop called Aqueous Anomaly. This poop has only a couple thousand views, but I would still say that it's well edited. In fact, I'd say it's more creative and well edited than a number of poops with millions of views. Such as this one, SpongeBob Blows Up the Toilet. A poop with well over 1 million views, but also with some of the, frankly, worst editing I've seen. Case in point, popularity does not equal quality. Don't even concern yourself with popularity. As long as you keep practicing and trying to improve, your audience will find you. Speaking of which, tip number 5. Don't beg for attention. Every so often I get a comment or message from someone begging me to watch their videos and/or subscribe to them. Seriously, this is a bad practice. More likely than not, it'll drive people away from your channel, in addition to making you look desperate for attention. Like I said before, your audience will find you. Also, speaking of quality, tip number 6. Put some effort into your work. This ties into another misconception that I see a lot. YouTube poops are supposed to be bad. Honestly, to me, that makes less sense than YouTube poop itself. YouTube poops are supposed to be bizarre, surreal, and or random, not poorly edited. I know when I watch YTP, I want to feel entertained or fascinated in some way. If every YTP was just a poorly made mess, why would anyone bother watching them? So don't be afraid to put some effort into it. Believe me, people appreciate well-edited poops. Tip number 7. Keep practicing. Don't be discouraged if your first few poops don't turn out well. Trust me, practically no one makes a great YTP on their first try. It's something that takes practice to be able to do well. You just have to keep trying and find your own style. Which leads to my next point. Tip number 8. Don't just copy other poopers. Now, it's one thing to be inspired by other poopers. For instance, I was inspired by the likes of Boogity-Boo, Geijutsuka, and Barney is Perverted. So I observed what kind of techniques they used and thought about how I could use them myself. After all, every pooper knows the same basic techniques. It's up to you to choose how to use them. So, what do I mean by don't copy other poopers? Well, you see, there's a line between inspiration and imitation. There have been times when I've seen poops that directly copy jokes or scenes from other poops. I'm not talking about just looking similar, I mean that the whole joke looks almost exactly the same. Seriously, don't do that. Not only does it make you look lazy and unoriginal, but it also leads people to think that you're just ripping off someone else. Ask yourself, do you want to be your own pooper, or just an imitation of somebody else? Tip number 9. There is no best style. The quality of a poop is determined by the skill and creativity of the pooper, not by their style. I've seen folks who worship one kind of YTP and then just write off every other kind as bad. Style and genre are a matter of taste. Any kind of poop could be good or bad. This goes for source material as well. Again, it's not what's being used, but how it's being used. Tip number 10. You can't please everybody. Don't even try to. No matter what kind of poops you make, or how well you make them, there is always going to be someone who's not going to like it. Don't try to predict what you think other people will like either. Trust me, if you try to please everyone, you'll end up pleasing no one, including yourself. Make the kinds of poops that you want to make. It's your hobby after all. Tip number 11. Don't try too hard. Say you have a source you really want to use for a poop, but your stress really weighs down creative thought, so forcing yourself will just stress you out even more. If you get stuck on a project, try walking away from it for a while and do something else. Then come back to it later when you have an idea or feel comfortable working again. Creative block happens to the best of us, so don't let it get you down. Tip number 12. Ignore self-entitled viewers. Let me tell you, nothing sucks the fun out of YouTube poop like self-entitled viewers. These are the folks who think that because they're subscribed to you, that you have to do whatever they say. Make more SpongeBob YTP or I'll unsub. That was cool, but I really wanted a gumball poop. You should make a this and a that because I want them. Gimme, gimme, gimme! Folks, you don't have to make any YTP that you don't want to. Your channel, your rules. Tip number 13. Ignore flame comments. You ever heard of constructive criticism? For those of you unfamiliar, it looks something like this. The sentence mixing in jokes were really good, but your masking could use some work. I would shorten up those stutters a little bit too. Stutters tend to get boring when they go on for too long. Unfortunately, comments of that sort are rare. Most quote-unquote criticism here on YouTube looks like this. This fucking piece of shit fucking sucks, fucking kill yourself, ah! That's not criticism. That's called being an asshole. These kinds of comments are really common, so don't despair if you get them. Sooner or later, it's gonna happen. The best thing you can do is just ignore them. As for the comments that are actually constructive, try taking them into consideration and determine what you need to work on. Last but not least, tip number 14. Have fun with it. YouTube poop is a hobby. It's not supposed to be as stressful and tiring as a 6-day work week. What's the point in doing it if you're not going to have fun with it and be happy? Whether you become one of the next big names or remain in relative obscurity, what really matters is that you enjoy making your poops. And don't forget to appreciate those that really support you. And thus concludes Poop Theory. My best wishes and regards to all of you up-and-coming poopers out there. Sincerely, Mobro Studios.